Hi everybody, welcome. Thursday morning, beautiful morning, bluebird sky. That's the Stewart Range from the south side. Maybe you saw the last video with Bob Miller. On the north side we were hiking, and this is the more familiar side of the Stewart Range from my point of view, living in Ellensburg. So Ellensburg's behind you, you're looking north, that's the Stewart Range. Some might know Red Top. There's a fire lookout on Red Top, and so we are in the Red Top area. I've never seen this. I've never seen Red Top with this vantage point. Really fun. Today I'm with a co-worker, Walter Szeliga. You might have seen that video from Discovery Hall where Walter was showing us the top of the building and showing us that beautiful raised relief map in the hallway down the hall from my office. And I'm out here in the field with Walter this morning, learning some things about our Panga GPS station network and his role with the Panga scene, among other things. Mount Rainier as well. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started with Walter Szeliga. Okay, everybody, looking to, what do you think, southwest maybe due west to Rainier. Oh, nice. We'll just give you a little orientation, as Dr. John Campbell would say, a few orientation slides. Now looking
west towards the Limas.
West towards the Limas, those little jaggedy guys with the snow. So Mount Stewart itself, 91 million-year-old granite, according to what I've been learning recently. And then the rest of the Stewart Range, I'll give you one more close-up. I can't stop doing this before we start chatting with Walter. I mean, he's being patient right now, but this, come on, man, this is where we live. You got friends in Wisconsin still. They go, why do you live out there in Washington? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, well, I don't know. Come visit me in Ellensburg, you might have an idea. Any other landmarks we can point out, Walter? What do you think? Is it Table Mountain?
Table Mountain is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Lions Rock is the edge of that cliff up there.
This here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a pop-up geology at Lions Rock last September, I believe it was. So now we're looking essentially east to the German chocolate cake. That's the edge of the flood basalts right there. The lighting is poor, but...
And down in the valley there, that's all Liberty. So any of your gold stuff is down in the very base of that valley.
Old Rob Reppin is digging for gold this morning. Okay, well, when Walter and I were talking about making a video with him, I think one of the early thoughts was to come up here, not because of the view necessarily, but because of this station. So we purposely held off in the car, Walter, till right now. So I'm curious, when's the last time you were up here, first of all, for this?
Probably last summer.
Last summer.
Yeah.
And can you give us an introduction to just the basics here, or however you want to operate here? But I'd love to learn with everybody else about what this station is, how it fits in, what you guys do to monitor, to install, everything.
So a while back, we there were probably, oh man, 2014, 2015, there were a series of magnitude 4 earthquakes in the Teanaway. Wow. And we had a couple permits from the Forest Service to install instruments out here, and one of them was in this general location. And I said, well, why don't we put a GPS instrument out there in case we have anything big. We want to have a baseline before where nothing is moving, and then when we have an earthquake, we could see if anything moved afterwards.
Okay.
And like anything, any good scientific instrument, you install something and everything stops. But it's fine. We have, we came up here and we installed, this is a very unique monument. This is not the way people typically make monuments, but we sort of did this on the quick. This is a bolted steel post with some concrete in it to keep it from wiggling around too much. And then this is your GPS antenna.
GPS. So this is not a not a seismic station. Nope. This is not. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a seismic station here. And then the GPS is connected through this antenna cable, and then it runs just in a very shallow trench up to this box. and then we transmit it with that fancy looking antenna back to Lind Hall. Not Lind Hall. We're not in Lind Hall anymore. We haven't been. We could fix that in post-production.
Okay, I got questions right off the
Discovery
bat.
Hall.
So who did the heavy work here?
Rex Flake and I did that.
You did? So
Yeah.
you're not hiring out a contract?
No, we did not. We came up here and we found, you know, as you can see, a lot of the stuff up here is really fractured bedrock. And to install these instruments so that they measure a point that is attached to the solid earth, you need to have pretty intact bedrock. And we had to sort of scrape around a little bit here to find some intact bedrock underneath the ground. And once we found that, we drilled a hole into it to mount this post. This post only a small amount sticks out of the ground, but I would bet you it's probably 8 feet long.
Oh, really?
It goes way down. Yeah, we wanted it to be, you know, pretty well braced. Typically, when you have these instruments, they actually come up really high, and they have these legs that come out so that they're nice and stable. And honestly, around here, that would stick out like a sore thumb. And the goal is not to have something that's really an eyesore. So this one's a little bit hidden. The downside to this is that in the winter we lose data in December and January because this whole thing gets buried in snow, and then it stops working. Oftentimes people are curious and don't know what things are, so we had these stickers made up. So we put a sticker on the box that explains what the heck we're doing.
Oh, let's try.
That way it's, like I said, people are usually just curious as to what's going on. So we have a little sticker here that says, remotely monitor earthquake early warning system. Here's government property, do not disturb.
Government?
Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't.
Okay.
There's no dome on this one, partly because of the shape of the antenna. The dome is originally intended for those GPS antennas with the rings on it. They kind of make a noise like a bell when you hit them.
Okay.
And that tends to accumulate leaves and clutter and snow, and birds make nests in them.
Okay.
So they put a dome over the top of them.
Got it.
These ones don't have that problem, and so fitting a dome to them can be done, but it's typically not done.
Okay. But this is we didn't create these pieces of equipment.
No.
There's suppliers that
Yep.
make these GPS receivers.
Yeah, there's standard surveying equipment companies that make these GPS antennas and the cables, and then the receiver. The thing that actually records the data is in here. That's just an antenna.
Okay.
And honestly, most of it isn't even an antenna. Most of it is a device to reject all of the multipath, so signal that comes in and bounces off the ground and comes to the antenna beforehand. The part that's the antenna is like the size of a postage stamp, and it sits right in the middle, underneath here. That's the antenna that listens to the GPS signal. The rest of it, that all around here, is just to reject all the extra signal and noise that comes in. The signal that comes in from space is very, very quiet, and so in order to actually pick that up reasonably well, there has to be a lot of noise rejection around the antenna.
Now, when you just put your thumb over the top, did you interrupt for a second the signals between the satellites and that thing?
Probably. They're not coming in directly overhead. The satellites come over 2 times a day, and they go from south to north, and they come in. So at that point where I'm covering this, it's getting signals from the north and from the south, and from all the different satellites in the sky.
Incredible.
And what we do to actually turn that signal into a time series is we conglomerate the entire day. We take all of the measurements for a day, and we gather them all together to get one good measurement for the whole day. So covering it up for 1 second isn't going to do very much.
But data coming from, is it 3 satellites or more?
Yeah, I mean, typically you can see about 12 GPS and any number of other constellations at this point. So the Europeans have a constellation called Galileo. The Russians have GLONASS. There's a handful of the Chinese have Beidou. The Japanese have one called QZSS. And so we get signals from all of those, and those are all useful to use to get a daily position for the GPS site.
Daily position. So before we go over to the other thing, there's how many of these? I know they don't all look exactly like this guy, but how many of these across the northwest part of the Panga network?
700 or so.
700.
Yeah, in the Pacific Northwest in British Columbia.
And they're all sending data into our building, Discovery Hall.
Yep, not Lind Hall.
Not Lind Hall. Not Science 2.
Used to be Lind Hall.
Okay. All right. So you come up semi-regularly, or you or Rex or whatever. And yeah, I'm curious what the process is here.
Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to open this box up and it's going to be full of yellow jackets that will attack us.
Wow.
I hope
Maybe
not.
I should hit slow-mo so I can see you just...
No. I hope that doesn't happen, but you know,
yeah,
stranger things have happened.
U.S. government property. I love that. It's technically true, but wow.
You have a slow-mo video of me not being able to unscrew this because it's slightly rusted shut.
I see those biceps you got there. I got all the faith in the world with you right now. You're buff.
All right, here it goes. Hey, no yellow jackets.
No yellow jackets.
This is Rex. Rex would not be proud of this. Rex does an amazing job of putting everything in the box in a very nice way. And I think at one point I came up here and tried to fix stuff and shoved it all back in there, put the lid back on. You should see Rex's. I mean, he takes pictures of every single one because he does an incredible job of cleaning up everybody else's mess like mine. So what we actually have some old equipment in here we could probably take out, but I won't do that today on the off chance that I will ruin it. Mm-hmm. Just a typical car battery, deep cycle battery, so that when it's cloudy or when it's nighttime, the solar panel doesn't do anything except charge the battery, and then we run off the battery. This is a GPS receiver. So this actually takes the recordings, it's covered in pollen right now, it takes the recordings from the antenna and just records it like, I don't know if you remember making mixtapes. Oh, yeah. You listen to what the radio station plays and you just record. That's all we're doing. It's the GPS satellites are radio stations. And we make a mixtape of all the GPS stations, and we record it here on the GPS box, and we play it back, you know, after the day is done, and we can use that information to get our GPS position, our actual position on the ground for that particular antenna. Okay. And then the rest here is just the communications devices that send the data back to Discovery Hall. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're getting the whole rat's nest of cables and everything in there.
Oh, I'm giving away all your trade secrets here. We got Russians watching this.
So these have, to connect to the old GPS receivers used to have this whole grip full of cables and you have to plug in with different devices. And on these new ones, you can go in and if you turn them on, you can see them over the wireless. They just broadcast just locally. So, like I said, some of these modern receivers are nice. You can actually see right now, it can see 20 satellites. So it's tracking 20 satellites. This one is set up to only track the US and the Russian constellation. So we're tracking 11 GPS and 9 GLONASS, which is the Russian system. And 9 of the GPS are high enough in the sky that we can actually use them for positioning at this time. And GLONASS has 8. And if you sat here all day, you could watch that number change as the satellites rise and set. But usually when we come up, we just check to see that that's actually up and running and it's actually tracking something, that all the cables are actually truly connected.
Oh, wow, this is so cool. And so there's a solar panel here?
Solar panel here, yeah.
So you came here, maybe we're doing a little overlap with the other video you were in, but you came here specifically because of this network.
Yeah.
As a grad student.
Yeah, the network wasn't nearly as developed as it is now. I think at the time we had maybe 50 to 60 stations in the Pacific Northwest.
So why Central Washington, of all places, to run this network? Is there a way to give us that story in less than 5 minutes? Does it start with Megan Miller?
It starts with Megan Miller. I don't know how, or if I do, I've forgotten.
Maybe I need to do a video with Megan Miller.
Do a video with Megan Miller. She'll know all about exactly how all of that processing and stuff came to be here.
But all modesty aside, you came as a grad student and now you're back as a professor and have been here for many years.
Yeah.
What have you been doing with this network that is, it's a different network than it was when you first got here?
It is. So when I came up here as a grad student, the network was a whole lot smaller, on the order of 60 stations. And then around the time that I was here as a grad student, and then after I had gone on to do my PhD in Colorado, the network across the entire continent grew, and it's to the point now where we're well over 2,000 stations for the continent, and for 50 or 60 in Antarctica. That I'm the one who now processes those stations every day. We also process them in real time here. All these stations around the world at the same time, and so rather than having people need to come and download the radio signals and then turn them into positions, which folks can still do if they want to,
Right.
we take those and we do all the processing to make position time series. And researchers don't have to go through all those beginning steps. They can skip ahead and just use the position time series.
Wow.
So.
But you're the guy teaching and doing all this other stuff too. You're saying you do this daily?
I do this every day, yes.
What the hell?
That's what I was doing with my frosted mini wheats this morning, right?
And you got 4 kids, and you're doing baseball, and you with the kids and everything else. When do you sleep?
At night.
Right, at night. Okay, you heard it here first. It's important to anchor these things in bedrock.
It is important to anchor these things in bedrock, yeah. So what happens is we don't care about how the surface of the earth moves. I mean, particularly when we're up on this little ridge here.
Yeah.
Every winter you get the ground freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws, and all these rocks slowly move downhill. The hills erode away.
Right.
We want to see how the actual earth underneath is moving, not how the soil is moving on the top. And so it's important to drill down into something like competent bedrock that doesn't have all fractures in it, because otherwise you're just measuring water seeping down and freezing and thawing, and the whole thing wiggles, and that's not what we're looking for.
Which has got to be a challenge if you're out at Washington's coast or whatever.
It's really difficult on the west side because there's trees everywhere, and you can't have trees. That's another thing we need here. We can't bury this in the forest because you can't see the sky. And so on the west side, it's particularly difficult to find good locations where you can see the sky.
Or bedrock.
Or bedrock. That's not fractured.
So there's an ocean shore station. What is that anchored in? Like, I'm putting you on the spot here, but like, I did a video a while back, like some of those stations are right at the coast, and I don't understand.
The ocean shore station might be on a building. Sometimes we use buildings, and buildings have their own problems too because they flex as they heat and heat and cool with the day and with the summer and the winter. But they can actually be pretty reasonable.
So to give us, maybe somebody's watching this and going, okay, is this overkill? Like, the ground really isn't moving, is it? Or like...
It moves a lot. So the position that we, over time, these time series are precise enough to give us, millimeter precision in the motion of the ground. And so you're talking the width of your fingernail kind of motion. That's over the course of many, many years. You can build a time series that does that. And these things will easily wiggle within a millimeter if you don't. They'll easily wiggle within a centimeter if you don't actually go down to solid bedrock. And it's noticeable for sites that people spent a lot of time and found really good rock, that they are extremely stable. And some of these ones on the buildings will wiggle back and forth as the year goes on, and you'll see it in the time series. And it depends on what you want to use it for. If you want to use it for really precise measurements for a certain thing, maybe you really can only use those ultra-solid bedrock-only sites. But if you need to just make a map and you need as many data points as possible, and it's okay if some are noisy, then you can put it on buildings. So
God forbid there's a magnitude 5.5 earthquake on Wenatchee Fault, or some fault that we don't know that much about, but it's
something underneath the Tianaway like we have had in the past.
Okay.
If we had a 5 or a 6 here, this would move. And it would move enough that you could tell it wasn't wiggling. So, particularly if it was here.
A ballpark how much it would move? I know there's variables.
Oh, yeah, depending on how close it is, you'd see centimeter movement. And it would be centimeter movement instantaneously on a daily time
or
series.
Or sideways, or both?
It depends on, it'll be down and sideways or up and sideways, depending on exactly where the earthquake happens and what kind of earthquake it is.
Now, I visualize these as tracking horizontal motion with the North American plate, or clockwise rotation within the leading edge of the North American plate.
That's the background signal that you can, that is, if you take the time series for long enough, that's the background signal you see. That's the line they trace out. But if you have an earthquake, it would just be an instantaneous shift down into the side or up into the side.
So it's not only horizontal movement, but it's vertical motion that you can document with these stations. God. I guess last thing that I'm curious about, and then we can talk about plants and birds if you want. Like, there's this emphasis on real-time GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Is that can you give us a sense of what real-time GPS is, and is it more exciting in Western Washington than here as far as the use of real-time GPS?
Well, I guess if by more exciting you mean you're going to get more motion when you have a big earthquake, yes.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, any good network that wants to measure those really large motions is going to need some stations that you know for a fact aren't going to move. And so for a really large earthquake, you're going to want to have stations that are moving a lot to tell you, yes, this is a large earthquake,
Yeah.
and stations further inland that are far enough away that aren't going to move, so that you know this isn't some weirdness that's happening to the whole network.
Got it.
Something strange with satellites, or something strange with the way that the measurements came into the building, you know, that would influence the whole network. An earthquake's going to have a very specific signature. It's going to have a lot of motion on the coast, or a large Cascadia earthquake's going to have a lot of motion on the coast and not a lot of motion inland. And by the time you get to some place like Iowa, you're not going to have any motion at all. And so processing all of those stations in real time is important so that you can distinguish this is an earthquake or this is just noise.
The fact that it's data coming in so immediately is the crazy part to me. Like it,
It is.
I can get it a decade or two ago where wasn't there campaign style? Style. You come in, you set up your instrument, you measure every year.
Yep. Yeah, I still do that on some of these. There's a whole bunch of these old, you know, the little brass discs that the USGS have on the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey brass discs. That little mark in the middle is the important mark that you put a very tiny surveyor's pin, and you can plop one of these antennas on, and you can measure where that disc is. And so they're all over the place in the Pacific Northwest. And so sometimes in the spring, if I need to get out and go for a hike to no particular place, I'll go out and put an instrument on there for a couple days and then come back and pick it up. And by doing that, you can fill in all the little holes in the network, in the whole velocity map for North America, and find out what's going on in different spots. It's a good reason to get outside and go explore some other roads, see some new views.
So fascinating stuff, Walter. Is the network complete and you're just kind of checking in and doing maintenance now, or is there like, what's the future of this network?
I don't think there are any plans to expand the network at this point. There's always a slow churn of stations that come in and out. We partner with other groups in the state, like the Department of Transportation, the Washington State Reference Network, and so we share this data in real time with surveyors around the state. And so every so often, you know, a building gets moved, or, you know, something happens and we have to remove a GPS site, and then we usually want to put a new one in nearby. Or in other places, we're able to put in more instruments, a higher density of instruments, where surveyors feel that they need more, you know, just a better signal. I know that we've talked forever about going up to Stehekin and putting in a GPS site, and that would sort of cover a gap in the North Cascades where we just don't have much in the way of sites.
Oh, interesting. Even though there's not much kind of background clockwise rotation happening in the North Cascades.
Yeah, the purpose of the Stehekin site would really mostly to help surveyors in that entire north central part of the state. It gives you a little bit of extra coverage. Surveyors tie into this network because when you're out there with your portable base station, you'll sometimes see them on the side of the road. If they're doing road work, they'll have a little tiny antenna on a stick, and they'll be moving around trying to actually survey the place they are. They don't have to worry about having another station to do their measurements relative to. They can do it relative to the entire state, and all of these antennas are tied together, and that data comes in real time. It takes the burden off of them for having to operate a base station.
Well, remind me what your master's thesis was using Panga's network. Down in Northern California or something?
Yeah, so I did a master's thesis looking at one of the signals that gets embedded on top of that North America motion trend. And that signal turned out to be, at the time, it was not clear exactly what it was, but it turned out to be what we call slow earthquakes now. So these are earthquakes that happen presumably on the plate interface between North America and the Juan de Fuca that take so long to rupture that they don't have a seismic signal that you feel. So you end up having an earthquake that's almost a magnitude 7, you know, a high magnitude 6 earthquake, which, like the Nisqually in 2001, if anyone was here in the state, I was in Oregon at the time and I felt it. It was a pretty obvious earthquake. It's the same amount of stored energy that's released during these earthquakes, but it takes 14 to 15 days in some cases, and so you don't feel it at the surface. But you can measure it with the GPS.
I haven't heard much about slow earthquakes in the last few years.
No, they just keep rattling along. It's still somewhat of a mystery as to exactly how the heck they happen, but they chug along in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. And The more instruments we put out, the more interesting stuff you find with them, but there's still a lot of mystery.
No major breakthroughs in the last 10 years.
No, lots of great speculation. No major breakthroughs.
Well, you did some important work on that. Like, what could you do to continue with that slow earthquake thing?
I think a lot of the focus has shifted to the fact that you can't, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, you can actually see seismic signatures with them, but they don't look like the earthquakes that you would typically, that a seismologist typically looks at. Yeah. And so understanding exactly what that signal is, I think is really where the frontier of that is at this point.
It's still the average of 14 months, more or less.
It's more complicated than that. At the time, it was 14 months because we were only looking at the stations around the Straits of Juan de Fuca, and those stations seem to be every 14 months or so. But the signal appears on stations all the way from the north end of Vancouver Island to Mount Shasta, down in Northern California, and it's got a more complicated pattern than that. In some places, it happens more frequently. Some places it doesn't. Sometimes it moves through things that look like barriers. Sometimes it doesn't. I think the bigger thing is, at the time, the only places in the world that people saw this signal were the Pacific Northwest and Japan. And now almost any place that you put a GPS signal, GPS network that has a subduction zone, you can see the signal.
What's an example of a place that has newly installed GPS network that now can see their slow earthquakes?
I mean, newly, it's decades old, but New Zealand, you can see them in. I think there's evidence you can see them. There's a subduction zone in Pakistan that you can see them in.
God.
I think people have seen them in places like Vanuatu and Tonga. You can see them in Central America. There's all sorts of, you can see them in Mexico.
There's still a chance those slow earthquakes have something to do with the great earthquake cycles.
I'm sure they do, yeah. That's another thing to figure out too. But you know, you have to live long enough to see multiple earthquake cycles to see anything about this, or really find some way to dig in and demonstrate that these two things are connected in a very real way without waiting for 2,000 years.
You're the perfect guy to keep working on that.
I'm not going to live to be 2,000. I don't think I want to. That sounds awful.
This is a Carl Reiner routine by or no, Bob and Ray maybe. I don't know. Right. Whoever was doing the 2,000-year man.
2,000-year-old man.
I don't know who that was.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks, man. I mean, how else can we use this? Let's just freelance now. I don't know. Or did you say you brought your laptop? No.
I did. I have a laptop and I'm going to download data. Now we'll get a visit from the black helicopters.
Yeah, it's almost like somebody's been watching us. I'm not paranoid. I'm going to cut this, get this helicopter.
I don't even know what this is. I've been watching a lot of X-Files. This is definitely a black helicopter.
Oh, this guy's low, man. We're from the government. It's okay. I'm associated with... Well, that seemed like a friendly wave. Well, on a personal note, after Monday's hike with Bob Miller, I'm still recovering. My legs after 3,000 feet of up and down, trying to keep up with Bob. Oh, my Lord. Of course, I didn't have enough water, so I was half dehydrated the whole time. That was a real thrill to be with Bob Miller on Monday, and it's a nice experience to be with young Walter here. I keep calling him young Walter, but I suppose he's those oldest boys about ready to graduate from high school, for goodness sake. Should I give the GPS location of this spot?
Leave it a mystery.
Okay.
Probably don't need any more foot traffic then.
Yeah. Even though you guys are all very friendly and you mean well, I guess we'll keep this site off the grid. That's Peel Point above Cle Elum. So Interstate 90 is going from east to west up and over Snoqualmie Pass. Peel Point is still a bit of a mystery as far as Eocene volcanism, but I'll leave that to Jeff Tepper to discuss at one point. He's got a sample from there. Kind of a nice shot of Rainier, wouldn't you say? It's the northeast face of the mountain that slid catastrophically 5,600 years ago with the Osceola mudflow.
Osceola, huh?
That's what the locals keep telling me.
That's funny.
Osceola.
In New Hampshire, there's another name like that, but everyone says it's Osceola. Maybe it's spelled different. I don't know. I never looked that close.
Oh boy. I'm sure we'll have YouTube comments giving us the definitive, but yeah, I've been corrected enough by Western Washington folks that I start going Osceola now.
Oh, I believe. I'm curious as to whether I was saying it wrong or whether the East Coast Osceola is different. Why the heck is there the same name across both coasts?
Exactly.
Skookumchuck's another one that shows up on both coasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Oh, that's cool. Merle, in your Paleo Mag, Mount Stuart batholith.
I think one of the more interesting things in terms of just magnitude 9 earthquakes is that there is a suggestion that, particularly with the Japanese earthquake, the Tohoku earthquake, that you can actually, there's convincing evidence, I think, that you could see the gravitational signature of the earthquake as it happened. Gravity waves move at the speed of light, whereas seismic waves move at the speed of sound and rock. And so you can see the actual motion of the plate underneath Japan happening in real time, where the signal moving across the world at the speed of light. But you really need a large earthquake. You need a lot of mass to move, and you need a large earthquake. And whether that's going to be something that you could pick out of the noise consistently to tell you have a magnitude 9, I don't really know. But that's a pretty neat signal.
Well, that's interesting. And no offense to people doing Ice Age floods research that I'm totally into, and North Cascades research, which I'm totally into. My God, you would think that there'd be incredible amounts of active research on this Cascadia thing.
I'm sure there are.
It's real. It's within hundreds of years. It should be obvious to all of us that there's, you know, a whole team of people. Like, why isn't there tons of funding? Is there tons of funding for that?
I'm sure there is.
There's a real threat.
There's a lot of people who work on it. I'm not sure that
Oh my God.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any major breakthroughs. I mean, there's definitely a lot of seismic zoning work that's been done. There's a lot of good work that's been done. I think, the Acosta Elementary School in Ocean Shores was redesigned based on the experiences from Japan. There's all sorts of neat stuff that's happened that's of real actual use. I actually had a little lab exercise I did with students where they were looking at people who had modeled, they used video game logic to figure out how, if everyone's in Seaside, Oregon, and you have to evacuate right away, what's the optimal path given a tsunami, and which places can you not make it out, and which places can you, and how can we mitigate that? So there's some neat stuff that goes on that's related to all this.
Well, that brings up the other point. Yeah, I mean that the communication of the science is abysmal from my point of view. And so to communicate this, you know, this is not an idea. This is overwhelming evidence now that this is a concern. So that can be stepped up. That's an understatement. The communication of this, and obviously that's a very complicated set of issues. The reason that it's not being absorbed by the public well. So yeah, I mean, man, just as I teach this stuff and I get, you know, students asking, you know, why is this important sometimes, or, oh, that's kind of cute, but like it's just fantasy land story time from the past. Boy, they sit up straight in their chairs when we're talking about magnitude 9 events and the recency of this. So I don't know, I'll cut most of this, but Jesus, why aren't we doing more?
Begin rant number 1.
Well, thank you. I'm going to continue to roll. I think as long as we're functional, if there's, I'll just, anything that appeals to you botany-wise or anything else. Do you want to go down the gradual way or you want
Let's go down the gradual way.
Okay, let me grab my pack.
You know what's fun about the gradual way is it's the only place I've seen bears up here.
Oh, good. Well, let's add that to our...
We'll add some Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
God, you are old. You know Mutual of Omaha. What was the other? Yeah, American Bandstand and Mutual of Omaha. My God, how old are you, son?
2,000 years.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, I got to look up that routine.
Most of it's probably not safe.
Well, thank you. That was really interesting.
We'll get some good footage of one of us sliding down this thing. This is the bad part. Then we can pop into the forest here.
Okay. So you have wide-ranging interests, including, yeah, there we go. You know, you're a birder, you're a plant guy, among other things. In this little ridge top here, what have you seen that's pretty unusual from the biology world?
I don't know. I kind of like coming up here in the summertime because there's a lot of butterflies come up here and fly off. So because there's a lot of, you know, you're not just looking at your cabbage whites in your garden that are eating your kale. There's all sorts of other butterflies that are up here. Like I said, I've been up here and I've seen bears up here, and we just bust through this thing here.
Okay.
It's cooler than that. There's some, I don't know, there's all sorts of neat stuff. Well, I was telling you on the way up, there's a Wenatchee Coneflower. I don't know if we'll see any on the way on this particular path right here. There's a couple of neat flowers that only grow here in what people call the Wenatchee Mountains.
Oh, this sounds like Randy Lewis now, the Native American guy.
It's pretty amazing. I come up here sometimes and will see a flower, I'll take a picture, poke around on the Burke Museum website and look for what it is, and can't find it, and folks will tell me, oh, well, that's a particular type of this flower and it only grows in the Wenatchee Mountains and it's not in any book. I'm always surprised. It happens far more often than I would have ever expected.
Right here in the Wenatchee Mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Randy was talking about this from his family history, talking about this being, and I think his word was isolate or something like that, which I think I needed to look up to even understand what it meant, but I got the gist that this is this own little island in the sky where there's not a whole lot of communication biologically with other ridges. And I'll stop there because I don't know what I'm talking about.
I thought you were going to break into islands in the stream.
Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, written by one of the Gibbs, I believe, or the Bee Gees. No, I think that's Bee Gees, yeah. Wow. Pop culture.
Here we go. Bears.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah, it's bear shit.
Literally shit.
Literally.
Oh, that's fresh.
That's some good stuff.
Oh, boy.
Where is the bear? We're going to bust out onto a Forest Service road here in a minute, so we'll be fine. I wasn't joking. I didn't even set that up, like, come down here and shovel it onto the path for you.
Hey, bear, we're here.
That's right. We are here, bear.
Man.
No bear, go bear.
You're confident that's what that was, huh?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I have definitely seen them here before.
Well, I think I saw my first bear in central Washington this spring over at the Leavenworth Ski Hill, if you can believe it.
That's awesome.
I'm almost sure that's what we were looking at a ridge across the way. I could not believe it.
I've seen my fair share of bear in central Washington along the power lines out near Easton.
Really?
You can pop up into some really cool geology on the south side of the power lines. I forgot what the name of that. There's a fault that pokes out over there. I forgot what it's called. But driving up to go check out all the rocks up there, I've seen bear almost every single time. If you go up in the morning, you can see them.
What? Really?
Yeah. I'm surprised.
Well, I got my head on a swivel here. I'm not kidding you. I don't think I've ever seen bear poop that fresh.
Rex and I came up here. We snowshoed up here one winter to fix this particular site, and we saw a mountain lion.
You did?
Yeah. We found the mountain lion scat first, and then we found a fresh set of trails, and then it was up in the woods.
Huh.
Here's that Wenatchee Coneflower.
Oh, the rare, is
Yeah.
this the rare one? Really?
Yeah, this is that Wenatchee Coneflower. So it looks like a regular rudbeckia that you'd have in your garden, but there's no pretty flower on it.
Holy cow.
I mean, it has a flower, but you know.
Well, I never would have.
Rather than getting wildly technical, that is what it looks like. It never looks any prettier than that, but that's the coolest part. And it only grows here in the Wenatchee Mountains as far as I know.
In all of North America.
I believe that's true.
Jeez. Oh, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. The whole thing is full of them.
One more time. Wenatchee Coneflower?
I believe that's what it's called.
Oh, man. What a treat. Yeah, I hear the bears love those Wenatchee Coneflowers.
Actually, no, I was going to say, is that bear grass? I don't see any bear grass.
I'm not a nervous guy, but
I
I think I am at the moment.
I haven't seen any bear grass up here. There was a lot of bear grass bloom in this. I was down at White Pass over the weekend, and there was a lot of bear grass
Oh,
bloom.
really? I only know bear grass from like Glacier National Park. I didn't know there was bear grass in Washington
There's
at
a
all.
lot of bear grass.
there?
Yeah, you have to be up because the same patches don't bloom every year.
Oh, okay.
And so if you're not there on the year that it blooms, you'd think it was never there. And then you come there on the year it blooms, and it looks like it's everywhere.
Okay, so that's bears, coneflowers. How about birds? What's up here that, I know you're a major birder, so what is there anything unique up here bird-wise? Not necessarily.
I don't know, there's always neat stuff up here.
Well, spotted owl, what did you say there?
I think this is this section of the Wenatchee Mountains is one of the last places in Kittitas County to have spotted owls.
How many are we down to?
Oh, I would, probably less than a dozen,
Really?
probably less than half a dozen. I feel like barred owls have B-A-R-R-E-D rather than barn. Barred owls they outcompete spotted owl, and I think I've even heard people say they've seen barred owls eating spotted owls. So,
Really?
yeah.
Okay, you got me going on these coneflowers now.
It's kind of neat, isn't it?
Sweet, man. It's like we're out on the prairie or something. I don't know what flower I'm thinking about out in Nebraska or something, but that's,
Oh, yeah, there you
for
go.
some reason, that architecture reminds me of that. Well, now I do have to give a GPS location, maybe. I don't know, just generally up here. Like, people should be able to, if they're attracted to these flowers.
Oh, if you come up to the Red Top Lookout Road and stop anywhere along that Red Top Lookout Road, you'll find
The same ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
these are all over the place up here.
Oh, good. That's what I'll do.
Yep.
I'll send
Yeah.
people to the Red Top Mountain Lookout, which is where I thought we were going today. So it's kind of cool. We're a little bit to the south.
So, these blue guys, I think, are larkspurs, some kind of larkspur.
Those feel pretty comfortable or pretty familiar to me. Come on, Gizmo. You getting tired? Come on, Gizmo. You getting tired? Well, if this is such a unique area botany-wise, I guess I'm surprised that there's not kind of a bird scene up here that's a little destination type thing as well. But that sounds like you're...
No, it's typical ponderosa pine stuff. I'm hearing chipping sparrows. I've heard some orange crown warblers. I've heard Townsend's warbler.
Wow.
There was a western tanager up there, Cassin's vireo.
Wait a minute. You
We
were
flushed-
talking. I was interviewing you, and you were listening to birds at the same time.
Yeah.
What kind of brain do you have, young man? Jeez.
Maybe I'm easily distractible.
No, I'd say you're high powered. Are you solar paneled? Are you solar powered? What do we got over here? I got a bird. Oh no, that's a big butterfly. Not that big, but okay. Now I'm getting distracted. Yeah, I haven't seen a soul. This is great. I suppose this is Jeep Central here maybe on a weekend. I don't know.
Can be. There's a lot of places to Jeep up here. There's a lot of neat roads to check out and go down.
But not the special ones. The special ones were with Bob and I on Monday.
Yeah, the special ones were with Bob and you on Monday. That's one of the southernmost places on the continent you can see Lyell's larch.
So up
These
at
are all western larch.
Lake Caroline, where I was with Bob Miller on Monday, I was telling Walter about that
Just looking at the
hike, and he's mentioning that the larches there are very unique, and that's the southernmost portion of that species of larch that continue all the way up through British Columbia. Yeah, there are a lot of butterflies, aren't there? That's sweet.
There you go. That's a California. That's a That's not an orange tip. That's an admiral.
Admiral?
I think so.
Get a good shot of you, Admiral. National
There he goes.
Geographic. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Walter. There's plenty to learn here from folks who know things. Not only geology, but other things as well. Come visit this place just like all these other spots. I'm sure that you'll enjoy it. Thank you. Love you and goodbye.